Growing up in the non-denominational evangelical church, the word ritual was one that we were always suspicious of. In fact, in many ways, it embodied everything that we thought was wrong with the church. Furthermore, ritual was almost always preceded by empty. In fact, we didn't have much of a category for a ritual that was not empty. Rituals were bad. They were going to wreck your faith. They were going to take all the life out of it, and it was our job to avoid them. Which is why it was so interesting to me that when I began exploring the history of the church, not only did I find rituals everywhere, but as I began looking into denominations and branches of the Christian tradition that still thrived with rituals, I was surprised to find that for some people, rituals were deeply meaningful. In fact, people would point to them and say that they are the thing that are actually helping them become more in love with God, more in tune with the way of Jesus, and living out the life that they believe they're called to. Like, I didn't even have a category for this. But yet, simultaneously, I did still find that for many people, rituals were, in fact, empty. I could go to the same Orthodox church service and see the priest's sons kind of walk in rushed, like looking like they just come out of bed and be like, yeah, crossing themselves, like whatever, and just trying to move on. But then I could also see people come in, and as they bowed before the icons and as they made the sign of the cross, you could see that it meant something to them. That in that meaning embedded into the way in which they were making the sign, they actually experienced what the ritual was meant to do, and I wanted to know why. And that is what we're going to explore today. This episode is sponsored by Ministry EDU.org. Chances are, if you watch my videos, you love theology, and maybe you've even thought of pursuing a degree in it. But it can be difficult knowing where to start, which degrees to look at, which schools, and how you're going to fit it into your busy schedule. That's where Ministry EDU.org comes in. It's a one-stop shop for degree and career guidance, and it is structured to help you find schools and career paths that match your spiritual mission. With program and career guides that span across Christian leadership and ministry positions, you'll be able to make an informed decision about your specific calling to serve. Learn more about how you can gain the tools to pursue your faith-based future today at ChristianMinistryEDU.org. Well, hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Austin, and this is Gospel Simplicity, a place where we seek to bring simplicity out of theological and historical complexity. As always, I want to say a big shout out to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can go to patreon.com/gospelsimplicity. For the past few months, I have been laser focused on this idea of ritual, in part because I was invited to teach a 4-week series at a local church on this topic of ritual. It was a non-denominational evangelical church that I've been helping out at, and it was incredible to get to draw on the full strength of the Christian tradition to talk about this thing that I think the evangelical church has been lacking desperately in need of. Rituals. You see, as far back as the Reformation, there began to be some, though certainly not all, but some Protestants who were becoming increasingly suspicious of rituals. In fact, they began to see the rituals of the church not as things that would help people grow in their faith, but actually the things that stood in the way of their faith. Most famously were the Anabaptists, who were very suspicious of rituals. But today, as we look at the non-denominational or evangelical movement, we see this legacy of a suspicion of rituals all throughout. I remember talking to people and saying, even if we started to do things too similarly at church, we should probably mix it up because we don't want to become too ritualistic. But I never remember being told why rituals were bad. It was more of just look at the case study of all the people who have rituals in their faith and aren't impacted by those rituals in their faith, and they're becoming dead in their faith, and so therefore rituals must be bad. I want to start at the very beginning today and talk about what is a ritual. To me, this is the working definition I've come up with for ritual, and I hope it's helpful for you. Rituals are repeated actions that embody and entrench values, ideas, and ideals. You see, they're not just limited to faith, though of course all major faith traditions are full of rituals. But it's fascinating to see how rituals show up in other places as well, and how they begin to embody and entrench values, ideas, and ideals. One example that I like to come to is standing for the national anthem before major sporting events in America. If you pause to think about it, it's kind of a strange thing, right? Like, you're getting ready to watch a football game, but all of a sudden, in this stadium that was full of raucous energy moments before, and there's people like getting ready to throw beers at one another, and they all hate each other, right? Because they're rooting for different teams. For a moment, everyone gets quiet. They stand up. They place their hand over their heart, a repeated action, right? To embody an ideal. It's deep with meaning here. It's saturated with meaning. And they stand and sing together. Something that we never do in public. When was the last time you just like walked up to someone and like, let's sing? Like, I don't think people do that often, but we do that. And why do we do that? Well, it's part of this effort to embody and entrench the value of patriotism in the U.S. Like, it is a way of cultivating that. And we can talk about whether that's a good thing, a bad thing, a neutral thing. That's not for today's video, but it's the same thing in schools, right? Like, why do we do that? We have a certain vision of an ideal of patriotism, of civic action, of civic participation, and we craft rituals to embody and entrench that. And to this day, you can probably say the Pledge of Allegiance, even though you haven't said it in years, because it is embodied through that ritual and entrenched. But here's the thing. To go back to that question, why is it that for some people, rituals are so deeply meaningful? And actually, maybe for them, when they do that, it does move them to becoming more patriotic, to becoming more civically participated. Or if we went to the church, why is it that for some, when they kneel before they get into their pew in a Catholic church, it actually reminds them that they are in the presence of God and they need to kneel? And that is actually shaping their faith and how they see the world. It's shaping their values, who they kneel before, right? Shaping an idea that God is present with them. It's shaping an ideal that they are citizens of the kingdom of heaven. Why is that all happening for some people? When for other people, all that's happening is they get a slight bruise in their knee, or they're gaining a bit of muscle with all of the kneeling. What's the difference? Here's the formula that I've been using, and I didn't come up with it. It comes from scholar named Casper ter Kuile in his book, The Power of Ritual. But what separates an empty ritual from a deep and meaningful ritual are three things: attention, intention, and repetition. That's attention, intention, repetition. Let's break those down. The first, attention. It is being aware and present to the ritual that you are doing. Now, I think this is so important, right? Because for so many of us, rituals are already a part of our life. They're a part of our church life. They're a part of our civic life. They're a part of our family life. Like, maybe you have that family dinner that you do and you have your own rituals that you have in that and how you eat. There's all types of rituals surrounding us on many levels. But the first layer of making a ritual something that is actually deep and meaningful and actually entrenches those values, ideas, and ideals in your life is simply being aware of what it is that you're doing. There's often talk of going through the motions in church, right? And I've talked before about how I think that's sometimes misunderstood, that in some ways the motions go back through you. But this is a bit like the difference between like inching along in the airport. Maybe you've had to like drag your kids through the airport, right? And getting on that moving walkway and actually speeding up in your faith. You see, the difference here is being aware of what you're doing, and it is equivalent to getting on the moving walkway. It's so big. For those of you that have rituals in your faith, maybe it's taking communion each week, the first step for that being something that is more powerful and meaningful in your life, not to say that it doesn't have intrinsic power and meaning, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying for you to get the most out of that is to be present to what you are doing. And it's kind of intuitive, right? Most of us know that when we pay attention in church, when we pay attention to the words we're saying in the national anthem, when we pay attention to that family meal, or when we all sit together, maybe at Thanksgiving soon, and we say what we're grateful for, when we're actually present in that moment and we're aware of what we're doing, we notice that it begins working in us in a different way. The second, though, is intention, and this is so big. What's fascinating to me is I see lots of converts come to Catholicism or Orthodoxy or even to higher church Protestant settings, and all of a sudden, the rituals that are embedded in those contexts are so meaningful for them. They make such a difference in their life, and they simply love them. They cling to them with everything they have, and they are their anchor in life. But for people that grew up with them, oftentimes they're like, what's the big deal with this? Like, it's just a thing we do. Like, I don't even know why we do like that. Like, I don't know. Like, why do we do the sign of the cross? And which way does it? Like, I don't know. What's the big deal? But why is it that these converts are so crazy about it and they think they're so great? Often it's the element of intention. This works in two ways. One, there's understanding the intention of the ritual itself. For instance, when you have the gospel reading and you're going like this, right? Like having it in your mind and on your lips and in your heart. Like when you understand the intention behind that, you're not just like doing this like little tap dancing thing. It's actually so meaningful because you realize that ritual is trying to embody something. It's trying to entrench something, and you're allowing it to do it by understanding the intention. This is the failure of catechesis in so many churches, and this isn't just on Catholics, it's not just on Orthodox, it's not just on Anglicans or Lutherans. It's everywhere in the church today. And a failure of catechesis keeps us from being able to understand the intention behind the rituals, and therefore we don't get all of it. We don't get the most out of it. They become empty because we don't understand the intention. But it's not just the original intention of the ritual. As important as that is, these rituals are designed with intention. But it's also our intention. So if you're showing up, you're present to that, you're in that moment, but then are you there to allow it to transform you? Have you set that intention? Because you can pay attention in church, but if you're actively setting the intention that I don't want this to mean anything to me, and you know those people, right? Like maybe you got dragged to church, and maybe just because of the type of person you are, you did pay attention, but you're like, nope, this is not going to affect my life. I like my life as it is. I'm not going to let that happen. The ritual is going to fall short. It might start moving you a bit, right? You might still be moving, but you're not on the moving walkway. So you set your attention, your intention, and then there's the ever important step of repetition. You see, these rituals are repeated actions. When they become one-off things, when you go to church like once every 6 months and you're not actually getting into those rituals, they're never really going to do the full work. It's like going to the gym every year for like a week in January. Yeah, it doesn't hurt, but does it make that big of a difference? Probably not. It requires repetition. Here's why I think this is so important. On two levels. For those of us that already find ourselves in churches that fully embrace rituals, if we want to get the most out of that, we need to recognize the true power of rituals. Seeing them not as just these empty structures that we have to adhere to, but these things that we can actually cling to that are meant to deepen our faith. And maybe you already experienced that, but maybe your kids aren't feeling that. Maybe your partner, your spouse, maybe the people that you love in your life that you want to see transformed with you, that they don't experience that. Maybe the difference is just regaining an appreciation for the elements of a ritual and understanding the intention behind them, bringing our attention to it and repeating them for the purpose of growing in our faith. But to speak to the audience that I grew up with, the audience that's suspicious of rituals, one thing that audience is certainly not suspicious of is things that deepen our faith. That is the tenor of the evangelical movement, and I love that. I love that evangelicals are laser focused on this idea of how do I grow in intimacy and love for God. That should be all of our goals, right? But the problem is, so often we struggle to do that because we're working with one hand behind our back because we think the very thing that's meant to help us is out to hurt us. Rituals. And because of that, because we lose the form and structure of rituals, we have to just embody these ideals through sheer force of will. We have to bring our full creativity to it each time. We have to reinvent the wheel rather than simply allowing ourselves again to stand on that moving walkway. It's been there the whole time. Like, you can stop trying to run uphill and do it with your own energy each week. You can allow it to work on you. You can go through those motions and allow them to wash back through you, shaping you into the person you were created to be. That is the power of ritual to me, and I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that we can avoid that situation of just seeing rituals as empty things or having rituals not really make a difference in our life. And I hope that we can experience the full power of them, the full wisdom of the tradition of the church that has set these powerful intentions for these rituals, that we might grow fully into our faith in a more meaningful way. Well, if you are interested in learning more about this, I can link to the series that I taught down below. I do believe that 1 week of that series unfortunately had some technical errors, so instead of a 4-week series online, it is 3. But thank you all so much for sticking around for this video. If you enjoy videos like this, where you get to hear my thoughts rather than just an interview and something a bit more devotional, please let me know. I'm happy to make more of them. But until next time, go out and love God and love others, because truly, above all else, that will change the world. This video is brought to you in part by Faithful Counseling. Faithful Counseling is an organization of Christian counselors that exists to help you get the help you need. You can find them by going to faithfulcounseling.com/gospelsimplicity. And when you use that link, which you can find in the description down below, you will get 10% off your first month, and they'll pair you up with a licensed mental health counselor in under 48 hours. Once you've been paired up with a counselor, you can reach them via instant message, phone call, video call, and more. I think you will really enjoy this, and I think it could be the first step on your journey to greater mental health. And mental health problems affect all of us, religious, non-religious, old, young, every demographic feels the weight of mental health. But there are resources available, and you don't need to go through this alone, which is why I encourage you to reach out to the amazing people at Faithful Counseling by using that link, faithfulcounseling.com/gospelsimplicity, and taking your first step towards healing and wholeness in your mental health. You know, speaking of rituals, you guys want to see something really cool? Please ignore my sweatpants. Do you see this? It's like 100-year-old altar gong, I think is what it's called. It came out of a church in Frostburg that they were modernizing, like, I don't know, almost 100 years ago. My great-grandfather and my grandfather saved it, and well, now they passed it down to me.